Investment advisory services offered by Pryor McCormick Investments, an Alabama-registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Stern AG Financial Services Incorporated. Member FINRA SIPC. Pryor McCormick Investments and Stern AG Financial Services Incorporated are not affiliated companies.
It's 5:33. Welcome back into the show. Leland Live Superstation 101. My good friend Steve Pryor in the studio as a new segment here on the station. We started it last week. Steve, I think we ought to recall this. Don't retire broke. That's one of your catch lines. I think I love it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. Do you? Doing all right?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's good to be here.
What we're going to try to do with this each week for about 30 minutes or so is to help just kind of educate folks on the markets and finance terms and it's sort of like a little classroom, in my opinion, over the basics of what's going on right now. There's so much confusing information for today, for example. Bad news comes out on GDP, the economy looks softer, and the market goes crazy. How does that happen?
Well, what's happened is for, more than Obama's administration, all the way back 10, 12 years, you've had interest rates being held low artificially. That's considered a stimulus because with low interest rates, business and people can just borrow money a lot cheaper and they can afford to do more things, creates more activity. Of course, that party is eventually going to end because it's, as far as the interest rates are concerned, it's like holding a beach ball under the water. You can force it and you can keep it up, but when it comes up, it's coming up. And when interest rates make that turn, and we saw that middle of May when it became clear that the tapering off of some of this stuff is going to happen possibly sooner than they had said. And everybody has been sitting around for years waiting for a sea change in interest rates. That is, interest rates basically hit a peak in my lifetime in the early 80s. And then ever since then, the early 80s to now, interest rates have either gone generally down. They've gone up a couple of times, which has made it great to own old bonds because back in the old day, I saw a snippet of Die Hard the other night, the old Bruce Willis movie.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole point is the guy says, when they land, we'll blow the roof, and they'll take a month figuring out what went wrong. And by that time, we'll be sitting on the beach drawing 20%.
Oh, wow. He said 20% in the movie.
He said 20%, which kind of dates the movie even more than the haircuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you can't get 20%, but back 30 years ago, you could get 15% on a U.S. government bond.
You got people today chasing, 5% is a miracle.
It is. It really is. And that's sort of one of the things I wanted to say. A lot of people think, I'm scared of the stock market, I go to bonds. Mm-hmm. I'll buy bonds. I'm conservative. I'm old. I'll just
Let me stop you there. Explain bonds to me, just the basics. What are bonds?
Bond is essentially you lending your money to somebody else. There are three kinds of bonds. There's U.S. government bonds, which means you buy the bond, you give the money to the government, and they promise you, we'll give this money back to you 5 years, 10 years, whatever. You got bills, bonds, and notes. But during that time, we'll pay you interest, just like car loan that you pay interest.
Sure.
So you can do that with the federal government. Those are then you can do it with municipal government, like, say, Jefferson County, where you might have a chance of losing the money if they go bankrupt. And the third category would be corporate bonds. Just, you can buy a Coca-Cola bond or any other kind of bond. So those are the three different kinds, but you're lending your money. It's a debt instrument, and basically if you buy individual bonds and just let them sit until they mature, then you're going to get your money back plus the interest that you earn.
Now, they still considered safe. By the way, let me mention we are taking calls for Steve and the folks at Pryor McCormick, 941-1011, 866-551-9933. This is part classroom, but it's also interactive, so raise your hand and Steve will call on you and we'll answer your questions. Are bonds still considered pretty safe? It used to be that munis were just safe. Governments they can take money by force and pay you back if they have to. But then we got Jefferson County and other municipalities getting weird.
Yeah, there are a couple of different ways to worry about risk. Obviously, U.S. government, you don't worry about them not paying it off because they just print the money. That's even though their credit rating went down 2 years ago, it's still safe in that regard. They're going to pay off. Municipalities or companies, anybody, it's just like your buddies. If you lend your money to one buddy, you're confident you get it back. You lend it to a bum, you're not going to get it back. Same way, that's where the ratings come in. You hear about AAA rating, AA, and all that jazz. That's where it comes in. Junk bonds are just corporate bonds that are issued by companies with bad credit rating.
Well, so a basic question, and I know this is general advice, with the stock market being sort of inflated by this the Fed money printing operation,
Mm-hmm.
are bonds a better place to be chasing interest rates right now, or is that kind of getting out of hand too?
Chasing interest rates is sort of like dogs chasing cars.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't live long doing that.
You don't want to catch one.
No, you really don't. Bonds, when I first got into business, 79, were at these high interest rates. Now they're historic low interest rates. So you're not really getting much bang for your buck to start with. You know, people buy bonds for two reasons: income and safety. Income has been kind of hurt because you just can't get the income. You can't just pile up $100,000 into a bond and get $8,000 a year. That'd be an 8% bond. You just can't do it anymore. So people are going lower quality. They're going after junk bonds. They're chasing every car that goes down the street because it pays a little more. I just want to remind people who are my age, and I want to tell younger people, look, we've been through this before. It's a long, long cycle. You know, interest rates were just screaming high. The prime rate was 21.5% back in 1981 or thereabouts, and ever since then, interest rates have gone down. That is the environment. That's good for bonds. It's like a seesaw. When interest rates go up, the price of the bond goes down. And that's simple because if you got a 2% bond and you own it and you're happy, interest rates go up to 3%, your 2% bond is not worth as much. It's like the seesaw. It goes down on the other side. And that is true of every bond, including government bonds.
So you buy a 5-year or a 10-year, are you locked in for that period of time? Is it like a CD, or can you can opt in and out?
That's a great question. You can buy or sell a bond anytime you like, as long as there's somebody to sell it to you or buy it from you.
Yeah.
And that's easy, but you have to realize, and that's sort of one of the big points I want to make, is that while you own it, the value of your bond goes up and down. Yeah, you might own a 30-year Treasury bond and say, man, that's safe, the government's going to pay. Well, they are, but if you try to sell it before maturity, the price could be much higher, much lower. And this seesaw that I told about, interest rates go up, value goes down, that is more true of U.S. government bonds than any other kind of bond.
Why is that? Because they'll run from it if there's better money?
No, because that's the only thing they trade on. When you have a corporation, they can go up and down in value because the corporation does better. Well, you know that's out of the equation with a government bond. So the only thing the government bond trades on, the only thing is interest rates. So it's affected more by rising interest rates. And we might be looking at, I want to mention this because we put a great article on our website. It's PryorMcCormick.com. And there's an article called The Looming Lost Decade for Bonds. You know, people talk about the stock market not going anywhere in the last 10 years.
Right.
Well, we probably have at least 10 years of the same thing or worse with bonds. Because if interest rates slowly go up, and when they start going like this, a sea change, they'll go up for years, a decade. The standard length would be 17 years. So you might be looking at interest rates going up most of the time for 17 years.
And then holding the bonds down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then am I being too pedestrian about it? But if there's the more money that wants bonds, the less they have to offer in interest. The less money that wants it, they got to attract people, so they got to offer more. So say China bursts and people are trying to run from China and come to the U.S. and buy bonds. Is that going to hold the price down too? I mean, this whole world economy that we're in?
Yeah, there is no question that the law of supply and demand does matter. But remember what I said earlier, interest rates, which determine the price of bonds, have been artificially held low by the government. The Fed, they just hold to try to jumpstart the economy. Problem is, again, it's been gone 12, 13 years, artificially low, at historically low rates. It's going to be a rude awakening when they let go of that beach ball and it shoots up out of the water.
Is the problem there with people sitting out there on their 401ks and IRAs? And I know some people just got it parked in a CD getting nothing just to keep it safe, because the rule has been, for a lot of people I know, just don't lose any. That's been a strategy lately, just don't lose money after what we have dealt with. Do you see people not diversifying now because they're running into one thing or another and not spreading it like we used to always hear? Put a little here, put a little there?
Diversification is still a good idea. You remember, I hate rules of thumb, but the rule of thumb was subtract your age from 100.
Oh, yeah.
And that tells you how much you should have in stock. So if you're 50, you should have 50% stock, 50% bonds. And I'm just here today saying, especially for bond funds, which is what you own in your 401k.
Yeah.
That's what you own in your 401k. The bond side, the safe side, may experience times, and we likely will, where they are less safe than stocks. Remember, stocks, they can go down, but they can go back up just from the earnings of the company. You know,
but bonds may get in a trap. They can't go back up.
That's right, because they're ruled by interest rates.
Wow. Yeah. So then what happens? I mean, if people see this this bottoming out or buy into this long term that the bonds stay down, where does the money go? I mean, where do people start putting their stuff?
That's a great question. One of the receptacles of that money in the past few years have been a really smart play is by large blue chip stocks that pay dividends. You know, the dividend rate of the S&P 500, the average dividend rate of the stocks that do that is actually higher than a 10-year Treasury bond right now. And
wow.
Yeah, it's higher. You make more income buying the stock. Now, the stock supposedly is more volatile, but I got the news for you. Since the beginning of May, the 10-year Treasury bond has actually lost 5.5% of its value.
Right.
So if you had $100,000, now you got less than $95,000 just from 6 weeks ago.
Just sitting there.
Just sitting
because
there. It's a government bond.
Wow. So, well, there's so many questions. I wanted you to name some blue chip companies, but I know we don't want to get into telling people how to pick stocks, and that's just not that's too much minutia. Let me just ask you this: have the blue chippers changed in the last few years because companies are coming and going and merging, and we've had all this what we used to call blue chips 10 years ago may not even be in existence anymore.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that happens all the time. You got the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Right.
All the companies on the industrial average are not necessarily industrial companies anymore. When you had the rising of a whole new industry, you know, the IT stuff, the internet stuff, then they had to make room for it. And they had to represent it. When companies like Apple and Microsoft and those just really started taking off, there wasn't a place for it. You know, you couldn't put that next to National Cash Register or not even IBM. And so a lot of the old names have dropped off. A lot of the new names are in there. You know, it is a lot of fun to talk about individual securities. But again, I don't want to mention any names because I don't want anybody running out and buying something that we talk about.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to go there. I was just thinking about how all my life I've heard blue chip stocks,
mm-hmm.
and that industry's changed, technology changes. Some of these companies, like I said, aren't even here anymore.
Yeah,
and it's all gotten kind of weird. We've got. I just wanted to bring this up. We've got the federal government with Obama, at least yesterday, wanting to step into going after the energy sector. Are we going to see any effects from that in some of these investment markets, or do you think people are just going to play that off as political rhetoric and just keep moving?
Well, there have been a lot of things that he said originally he wanted to do, and people played it off. But through regulation, through executive order, he's been able to affect a lot of industries. So, yeah, you cannot ignore it. I mean, when they turn their big guns on a particular industry, which who would have thought one of the best and brightest and most vital industries in our whole country, our federal government would take aim on it? Who would think? And now, if we were the worst polluters in the planet, let's try to clean it up. But we are so much cleaner than China and India. I mean, we could just be wiped off the map as far as pollution is concerned. Wouldn't affect the overall look. Now, I'm not a scientist, but that's the way I see it.
Sure, and the one bright spot in the economy during all the struggles has been what's going on in North Dakota. We're tapping our own energy. We've got the technology now to do things we never could, and this country's ready to take off like a rocket, and then here comes the government with something else.
Yeah, it's just like the pipeline from Canada.
Yeah.
I just read today, I didn't get the details, but the state of Texas alone is building 4 or 5 new pipelines. Yeah, we've got so much here that we could do, and for what I deem is no good reason, we're putting a crimp in it.
And, of course, on the consumer level, which I think is a little bit off the field to some of the stuff you and I normally talk about, but you talk about skyrocketing utility rates because we're coal-fired in the South. Then I guess that affects disposable income, which it does have a ripple effect all the way back to the stock and the bond markets and what people have to invest in all that. It's all tied.
Exactly. And that brings up, I hope, one effect that we see from this. People need to be more self-sufficient.
What do you mean by that?
I mean by save your money, watch your bucks. Don't buy a house you can't afford. One of my favorite quotes from Benjamin Franklin, the surest way to feel rich is to buy half the house you can afford. And if I had one piece of advice to people, that would be it.
Yeah.
Certainly spend less than you make, but when you have extra money, invest it, save it. Look, we don't know what a ham sandwich is going to cost next week, much less 10 years from now.
Was that an inflation comment? You worried about inflation?
I am worried about inflation. When I first got in the business in 1979, I met people who had retired in the state of Alabama in 1969 making $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
And if you were making $10,000, had no debt, and you were just a normal guy in Alabama in 1969, that's fine. Now, they bought bonds, and they got that, and that's how they got their 10%, or it was Social Security or a pension. 1979 rolls around, the cost of living doubled in those 10 years, and that $10,000 puts you below the poverty level.
Wow.
Now, fast forward now,
in 10
years. In 10 years, fast forward to now, what could anybody live on $10,000 a year? You cannot.
Wow. You just, this don't retire broke philosophy just
no kidding.
hit me between the eyes, because we could very well experience that with the money printing that's going on, and your dollar today is worth 50 cents tomorrow or whatever.
We will experience higher inflation, and I'm sure you've said it a million times, but the government, to partially hide it, doesn't even quote real inflation anymore. Adjusted inflation.
Sure.
They take out the two little details like energy, gas, and food. So if you can live without eating or driving your car, then the government's inflation number is just about right for you.
But when you put the essentials back in there, we're all paying a lot more.
And also college students. College prices have gone up faster than the rate of inflation, more than double, and nobody in America has a higher personal inflation rate than seniors. If you're retired, the stuff you buy goes up faster in price than the stuff anybody else buys.
What do you mean?
Medicine, medical care, those kinds of things have a higher inflation rate.
Okay.
You look at
Because
insurance.
once you shift to being in that age status, you start buying different things.
Absolutely.
And those are those essential things are the things that
Exactly.
go crazy.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
Yeah,
hey, we're going to take a short break. We'll come right back and wrap this segment up. I just wanted to go long on that one because you just got me going with that stuff. By the way, we probably have time to squeeze a call in if y'all want to do it. 941-1011. Steve Pryor, Pryor McCormick, good guys, smart guys. They're financial planners and financial experts, and they're the guys to give a ring. Steve, give that number again before I forget to tell them.
986-0060. Long distance, 1-800-800-8761.
Pryor McCormick, they're our experts, and they come to us every Wednesday to give us a little bit of advice and help us make sense out of this stuff. Back here in just a second. Stay tuned.
Leland Live on Superstation 101.
All right, 5:53, back at it, Superstation 101, Leland Live, talking about your money. We don't want you to retire broke. Pryor McCormick coming in here giving us advice so you don't do that. Sometimes, Steve, I guess it's best to feel a little broke now and not be broke down the road by saving. And you just keep emphasizing, put money back, protect yourself.
Yeah, the most important thing about your investment program is not the return on your money. First you got to get a return of your money. You want to have enough of it safe. But mainly it's just what you put in there. I mean, sadly, we got a lot of people wait to their 50s and say, I need to retire in 10 years. I'm going to start putting aside some money. And it's a truly sad thing. Forget about being at the mercy of the federal government. You don't even have enough money to retire if the government does stuff for you.
You probably saw these statistics that were out this week, and I'm trying to do them from memory, but you may already know them. It was something like 70% of the country lives paycheck to paycheck.
Oh, absolutely.
Only 22% have enough savings to get through a month or something like that?
Absolutely. You got 70% of America do live paycheck. Dave Ramsey says that all the time.
Yeah.
It is, in my experience, true. Ask yourself, if everybody who works or gets money got fired, how long could you go? And we talk about, we ask our clients to have at least 3 to 6 months of what they would spend per month just in reserve. And we put that in cash or extremely safe money. And
so I noticed you said what you spend, not really what you make. So
absolutely,
what you got to have, get 3 to 6 months of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just figure out, okay, if we were going to live on rice and beans and rice, what would it cost us per month? And multiply that times 6, and then you're probably okay.
And then put it where?
That goes right now. It goes in the credit union, in the bank, in the money market. Do not invest that money. That is not for investment. That is emergency fund money.
That's to go get it when something bad happens.
Yeah,
and that could be personal.
Yeah.
Health.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's the whole thing.
Disaster. Hell.
Life happens. Yeah. People always say, well, I'm going to retire when I'm 65 and a half or whatever the number is. Yeah, maybe if you get to do what you want to do. How many people are forced into retirement? We all know people like that, either a disability or even you're 59 and you just can't find another job.
Well, with this
company
economy, instead of forced into retirement, forced to keep working because the money's not there because they took a hit and it's late in life and you just got to keep going.
Yeah, well, if you can live on Social Security and very little else, then you don't really have to worry about it. But I don't know too many people who want to live that way. You just have to sock more away. Rule of thumb is if you've got a principal amount, whether it's $100,000 or $10 million, and you want to live off of it, you can take out 4 to 5%. That means for every $50,000 that you want to spend in income, you need $1 million set aside. Now, that's scary. Now, that's if you want to keep your principal, keep your $1 million roughly the same. Fluctuate some. But if you want to start today at 65 to retire, you may have 25 more years. People living longer.
Absolutely.
Healthier. You got people living in their 90s past 100 all the time. Well, you don't want your money to run out before you do. That's why we talk about don't retire broke.
I love that phrase.
Yeah.
The people that calculate that length of time from retirement to death, you say, well, I'll have a good 20 years. And then you make the estimate, and I'm living off about, I don't know, let's say I'm living off $100,000 to use a nice round number, so that's what I'll need for 20 years. Well, at the end of that 20 years, maybe you need more than $100,000. So how do you figure that out?
Well, and you're living on it given your current situation. What if you get sick? What if you require help? What if we're going through that with a family member for us right now. You all of a sudden go from a normal cost of living of $3,000 a month to $6,000 a month. What are you going to do? People always say, well, I want to spend all my money. I want the last check I write to bounce. I don't want to save any for the kids. I want to spend it. And of course, I tell them that's easy. We can do that very easily. You just tell me when you're going to check out, and we'll invest
accordingly. Tell me what day you plan
on.
on dying, and we'll back it up from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, you guys, man, we could just keep going. Steve Pryor just knows so much. I learn something every single week. They're with Pryor McCormick and ready to help you with your money, and they don't want you to retire broke. Steve, tell them how they can contact you again.
1-800-800-8761 or 205-986-0060. And go to PryorMcCormick.com. Check out that bond article that we put in there.
So you just put that up to kind of give people a little bit of free education.
Go in there. It's the right-hand side of the homepage. Click on it.
And that's one word, Pryor McCormick, 2 C's?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure we spell everything right. Spelling on the radio. Steve, I appreciate you being with us again.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next week.
Yes, sir.
It's the Don't Retire Broke segment. Hang in there with us every week. We're going to keep you informed and help you out. It's 6 o'clock. We'll take this break, come right back. Stay tuned. Superstation 101, WYDE.